Joining me now is Democratic Senator Mark Warner of Virginia. He's also the vice chair of the Senate Intelligence Committee. Senator Warner, thank you so much for being here, and Happy New Year to you.
Thank you, Kristen. Happy New Year to you.
Thank you. Senator, you are about to head into an extremely important meeting with administration officials who are prepared to brief you and the other members of the Gang of 8 leaders about the operation in Venezuela. What are your main questions?
I think my main question, I've got twofold. One is, what kind of precedent did we just set? I know the administration is claiming this was simply executing a warrant. And under that theory, does that mean if Vladimir Putin thinks that Zelensky has broken Russian law, that he could be extracted with no consequence, or that President Xi, because the Communist Party of China has believed for 50 years that Taiwan is a rogue province, they could bring it back in? This idea that gives you a blessing to take whatever unilateral action you want would completely destroy any kind of international order. So the basic underlying rationale and precedent is number one. Number two is the question of, okay, if we're running Venezuela, what does that mean? And what the president's comments sound an awful lot like what President Bush said is, don't worry, this is not going to be hard. And what President Bush said about Iraq, this is not going to be hard, and we're going to have it all paid for by the Venezuelan oil itself. Well, as anyone who follows Venezuela, Maduro was such a bad guy, and he so mismanaged the country that to get Venezuelan oil exports back anything even approximate to where they were at 4 million barrels 30 years ago or 20 years ago will take 2 or 3 years. Does that mean we're going to be there for 2 or 3 years controlling the country? And how do you actually control a country unless you have boots on the ground? And this notion that they keep switching their answers and it's, no, we're going to do it from an offshore basis, that doesn't pass the smell test.
Are you confident about the level of transparency about the briefing that you will be getting today?
No, unfortunately, I am not. I will acknowledge Secretary Rubio tried to reach me after the strike had started. But not in terms of before, and Marco and I we're friends, and clearly he would have been concerned if he was still in my shoes he was a former Gang of 8 member. And are they going to give us the whole story? And the question that kind of that's also being begged is, will my Republican friends be willing to say, hey, hold on, our system is not that one individual arbitrarily gets to make all these decisions and put our troops in harm's way. And a lot of those troops, remember, these ships are almost all have been home ported in my state of Virginia, out of Norfolk, Virginia. And I got a lot of moms and dads of those sailors and soldiers who are awfully concerned about their sons and daughters.
Do you think, and I hear the terms in which you're discussing Nicolas Maduro, do you think that Venezuela, though, is better off without him, given that he was a narco trafficker, given the administration says he's responsible for the deaths of so many people?
Well, do I think Venezuela is better off without Maduro? Absolutely. But the administration loses a lot of its credibility when we say, we want to go after narco traffickers and we believe that our law is the best in the world. And then at the same breath say, oh, by the way, this former president of Honduras, Hernandez, who did exactly the things that Maduro has been accused of and who got prosecuted by American law and was put in prison, suddenly gets pardoned for political reasons. That undermines the credibility and any kind of moral high ground that America may have. But is Venezuela better without Maduro? Absolutely. But is it really significantly better if we're simply moving to another regime loyalist and the Vice President Rodriguez? And I was frankly astonished by the fact that President Trump so kind of dismissingly seemed to exclude the Venezuelan opposition leader Machado, who had won the Nobel Prize. Maybe he's just upset that he didn't get the Nobel Prize and she won it, but to dismiss the person that had, she and her party had won what appeared to be about 2/3 of the vote when the Venezuelan people very bravely went and voted in 2024. Again, we made a mistake back in 2024 when Biden was there, not putting more pressure on it at that moment in time. But that still doesn't mean, this going forward lack of plan is again going to work out for whether it's Venezuela or for America.
And I did notably, I asked President Trump in my call directly if he didn't want Machado there because she won the Nobel Peace Prize. He said that did not have anything to do with it. But let me ask you, because I want to ask you broadly speaking about how you see this, what started off as a pressure campaign, quite frankly, in Venezuela. You stopped short of calling those U.S. strikes on alleged cartel boats war crimes. In my conversation with President Trump that I just had on the phone a few moments ago, he said the United States is not at war with Venezuela. House Minority Leader Jeffries told me over the weekend he believes the actions the U.S. took over the weekend do constitute an act of war. How do you see it, Senator?
If it walks like a duck and quacks like a duck, sure as heck seems like a duck. We've got the largest armada that has been assembled in the Caribbean, at least since the overthrow of Noriega in Panama. We have 15,000 soldiers and sailors. We sent in the Delta Force. The fact that 150 planes were dispatched, and let's give the American military enormous credit. They have their execution was brilliant, but to somehow describe that as anything other than a military mission in an effort to kind of make a regime change, I don't know how that passes the smell test, not only around the world, but I don't think it could pass the smell test of most Americans. And honestly, most Trump supporters who thought that President Trump was going to get us out of these foreign wars. And instead, you've got not only the action in Venezuela, but him now threatening Colombia, Mexico, countries that have had democratically elected presidents, whether we like them or not.
President Trump has said, and frankly, he reiterated in this call that I had with him, that if the Venezuelan interim government does not cooperate, the United States has a second wave waiting. He does not believe that would require congressional approval to launch further action in Venezuela. What is your response to the president?
My response is this is one more example of President Trump completely ignoring the laws of our country. I mean, I cannot believe, I wouldn't put anything past President Trump, but the idea that he would try to make the case that the largest armada that we've amassed in decades, 150 planes deployed, Delta Force sent into a nation, and we're saying we're threatening to go back in, and he's not, what his words he used on Saturday at least was he's not afraid of boots on the ground. That is a military mission. That is a classic definition of military action. And my concern is not only the ramifications for Venezuela and the whole region, but my concern as well is if this is the new standard, and then what is to stop Putin from not only taking Zelensky in Ukraine, or for that matter, if he disagrees with the Polish president? And says, okay, that Polish president has broken Russian law, so we're going to go in and grab him. Where does this end under this theory of the case? I don't get it.
Well, before I let you go, Senator, I do want to ask you about another story we are following. I want to get your reaction to Defense Secretary Pete Hegseth announcing he's censuring your colleague, Senator Mark Kelly, over his participation in a video that called on troops to resist unlawful orders. What was your reaction to that move by Secretary Hegseth?
Mark Kelly is more of a patriot and has put his life more in harm's way to protect our country and then to serve our country as an astronaut. And I think it is insulting. And again, I'm not surprised by Secretary Hegseth. This was somebody that was so disdainful of our military that he treated classified information in a sloppy way when he was on a non-secure channel like Signal and putting out American military plans in terms of bombing in Yemen before it took place. And again, he never even had the courtesy to come down to Hampton Roads and talk to those sailors' families who were put in harm's way because of his carelessness. So In this one, I think not only me, but I think virtually every member of the Senate would say Mark Kelly's patriotism and his commitment to our country is second to none. And I think this is purely political retribution.
All right. Senator Mark Warner, thank you so much for your time. We hope you will stay close to us on all of these different stories, including after your briefing today. Really appreciate it.
Thank you, Kristen.
We thank you for watching. And remember, stay updated on breaking news and top stories on the NBC News app or watch live on our YouTube channel.